All right, hello and welcome everyone. I'm going to talk about why I built a tool called xlwings and why it's a little bit of a different take on Python in Excel. So before we get started, please have a read through these antitrust guidelines first. And assuming that you have seen them a couple of times, I'm going to just go over here to the sponsors. Obviously, it's always great to have good sponsors on a conference, so make sure to check them out. And with that, I guess we're ready to dive into my talk. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit to you for those who have never heard of xlwings. And then also in that spirit, I'm going to introduce to you what xlwings is, what's the design purpose, like what's its design, what's its purpose, etc. And then just because it's the number one questions I always get is what's the difference really between Microsoft's official Python in Excel against xlwings and even more so against xlwings Lite. That we will find out what exactly the difference is. And then mostly I'm actually really want to spend time on the demo to really show you what's going on, what you can do with xlwings and how that really looks like. All right, so about me, I am, funny enough, I have, like in my previous life, more than 10 years ago, I was actually working at UBS and in largely what was a team with actuaries on board. So that's a funny side story. I'm like totally not an actuary myself, so I'm not gonna talk too much about really actuarial stuff. Well, anyhow, what we did back at UBS was we worked with MATLAB and then tried to like build a user interface in C# around it, and that didn't really work so well in my opinion, which is why I was looking for other option, and that was how I ended up in Python. One thing though that I missed in Python was a thing that was called xlink, I believe, in MATLAB, which allowed you to connect Excel to your MATLAB IDE, and then you were able to like very easily build user interfaces in Excel powered by MATLAB calculations. And so that's how xlwings born. That was the original idea, to bring that over from MATLAB to Excel. But then at the same time, as we will see, it was to bring the VBA experience a little bit to a more modern level. All right, so that's been a bit of time. That was back in 2014. And 4 years ago, I was publishing, 5 years ago I wrote the book, and it came out 4 years ago. A book about Python for Excel in general, so that's about xlwings, but it's also about all the other packages that you'd want to use in Python to work together with Excel. And since there has been a lot of things happening in between 2021 and 2025, I am currently wrapping up the second edition, which is scheduled to hit the bookstores in the middle of next year. And so finally, I have also recorded a LinkedIn learning course that you can watch if maybe your company has a subscription. It's not about xlwings, it's about the official Python in Excel solution. If you want to learn how that works, then certainly that's a good video for you to watch also. If you are interested in any of the things that I will talk about today, then I invite you to follow me either on Twitter or LinkedIn, and also subscribe to the xlwings channel on YouTube. The first two social media are a little bit more active. I'm a little bit more active on Twitter and on LinkedIn, but nevertheless, there's here and there a new video on YouTube, so I suggest that you follow me there too. All right, and with that, let's find out what xlwings is. So I've already mentioned it earlier on, what I try to do with xlwings is not just like bring over the MATLAB Excel link experience over to Python. It's first and foremost giving you the ability to, program the Excel application with Python instead of VBA. VBA has become very, very old. They keep it alive, but they do not invest in the language. So you won't get any new language features. And a couple of things are just very awkward to do, like, working with web APIs, working with arrays in general. That's just not what VBA was built for. And so xlwings is, think of it as an Excel add-in that sits between Microsoft Excel and Python, and allows you to access the whole Python universe directly in Excel. And that really gives Python developers the ability to quickly create tools that can be used by Excel users. And it's sort of like it's a competitor to, let's say, building a web application, because very often web applications, like the most popular functionality in a web application is the export to Excel button. And so, like, to sort of prevent that, xlwings gives you the ability to directly build your application in Microsoft Excel. It supports running Python scripts that automate Excel. It allows you to create macro functionality, clicking a button and then run Python code, and also write custom functions. We're going to dive into all of this in the demo part. And yeah, on the right hand side is just a couple of examples of what actually you get access to. If you've ever used Python, then you probably know it's very big in machine learning and AI. It can literally sort of like connect to any of the other systems, and it's a little bit better at creating scientific plots than Microsoft Excel. So that's sort of like what people use it for. And then as a sort of a preview, this is high level how the syntax works in xlwings. So if you've ever used VBA, then probably that sort of sounds familiar to you. So like you can just, write hello world to the cell A1 of sheet A1, of sheet 1. And then it looks the same for a data frame. And it doesn't really matter if it's a pandas data frame or if you have switched to polars, that's also working exactly the same. So like it should just be as easy as possible to work with Python objects and writing them over to Excel. Same thing for like matplotlib, just get a hold of a figure object and then add this as a picture into Excel. And finally, as a preview, we're going to go all through this again in the demo. You have a custom function that you can call from Excel cells, and that's really just a normal Python function that you slap a decorator on top, like in the simplest form. Now, I want to say a few words about sort of like the xlwings ecosystem, or how xlwings works under the hood. So xlwings, the classic version of xlwings, the one that came out 11 years ago, is an open source Python package. You can install it with pip or with UV these days, and you can use it to automate Excel from your local installation of Python, and you can automate and program the local version of Excel with it. And that dotted line here symbolizes your own computer. But nowadays there's sort of a family of xlwings. So there's not just the open source package in and on its own. You can run it in different environments. So like, as we've just seen, the classic way is you run it locally, offline on your laptop. Then the new thing that just came out a little earlier this year, so I believe it was back in April, is called xlwings Lite. Most of my demo today is actually going to use xlwings Lite. As you can see, it also works entirely on your own computer, and it uses a technology which is called WebAssembly. WebAssembly is running in a browser and allows you to basically run programming languages such as Python in the browser directly at near native speed. And so that's quite a jump in technological advancement there. And so yeah, that's what we're going to use for most of the demo today. And then finally, you can probably figure out, since xlwings Lite is called Lite, it comes with a few restrictions. But if you do want to get around these restrictions, you can have basically xlwings Server, which is the enterprise solution. It runs on a self-managed server, behind your firewall, and it runs a complete full installation of Python, so it doesn't have any of the restrictions. It does share, though, the with xlwings Lite, the fact that you do not have to install a local Python installation on the end user's machine. So that's relatively big, and that's sort of like the main difference between the Lite version and the server version compared to the open source version. The open source version back here requires a full Python installation on every end user's machine, whereas these two versions here either use Python directly in the browser, so the end user doesn't need to do anything, or you manage it on a dedicated server that you self-host, and the end user also does not have to manage the Python installation. All right. So much for the introduction of what xlwings is on a high level. And before we dive into the demo, I would love to show you a little comparison between Python in Excel and xlwings Lite. Now, why specifically against xlwings Lite? Well, it's easy because the perceived way that Python in Excel works is you open a workbook and you have Python running. You don't need to install anything, and that same experience you can have with xlwings Lite. The only difference is you need to install the xlwings Lite add-in, which you can do with a single click from the Excel add-in store. Well, so as you can see schematically, Python in Excel depends on the cloud, so you really do send all the data to Microsoft, they compute it in the cloud and then send back the results, whereas xlwings Lite runs entirely on your own computer. And I guess the vision is also different. So we've learned about the xlwings vision that I want to be able to replace VBA with Python, but sort of like stick as close as possible to the VBA experience. Whereas Python Excel is doing something a little bit different. So Python in Excel brought the Jupyter Notebook cells to the individual cells in Excel, in the Excel sheet. And so like you're just working with a two-dimensional Jupyter Notebook. That's pretty much the difference here. So yeah, just to give you a little overview of like the limitations on Python in Excel, which finally sort of like triggered me in creating the xlwings Lite solution. So the first, the biggest one is like you have daily and monthly usage limits without sort of like knowing how they're calculated, and also without being able to like track them. So the way that you learn about them is by just seeing a blocked error in your Excel sheet, which I find a little bit the hardest issue that I have actually with their solution. Then you need a cloud, you need an internet connection because it runs in the cloud. It's only supported on the subscription model of Excel. It cannot install your personal packages. It cannot install packages that aren't yet provided. You cannot access the internet from your Python code. and it also cannot automate Excel. So you can't add a sheet, you can't turn a range into an Excel table, etc. And then finally you have an upper limit of data sets that you can work with, and you need Power Query basically for anything that gets data from outside. So that's a little bit for me personally, that's also a little bit of a sad story, because sort of like I turned to Python specifically because I do not want to use Power Query and write M code. Anyhow, so that triggered me in writing the xlwings Lite. And now let's switch over to the demo. I'm gonna have 3 different sections. The first one is I'm going to show you the classic version of xlwings with a Jupyter notebook, just to help you understand how you can manipulate Excel from Python. And then the second one is sort of like, let's go through macro functionality. We wanna click a button and then make something happen, and we're going to use a Monte Carlo simulation for that one. And then in the third part we're going to talk or use custom functions, and you can get a feeling for how that works. All right, so at this point let me switch over to the first file, which is my Jupyter notebook here, and I'm just going to run through that. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger so you can maybe see it even better. So I'm just going to import pandas and xlwings here, and then just to have something to work with, I'm actually going to read an Excel spreadsheet using pandas. And so you can see that it's the Apple, open, high, low, close, the Apple stock. And we're going to just, print that data frame here. And as usual in a Jupyter Notebook environment, you sort of like get a preview for that data frame, which is often, good enough. You don't need more. You can plot it and whatnot. But sometimes you just want to have all the numbers in an Excel spreadsheet to scroll through. And obviously you're going to tell me what sense does it make? You read the Excel spreadsheet and now I'm going to write it back to Excel. And you're totally right, but the data could come from anywhere, from a database, it could come from a Parquet file, it could come from a CSV file. So it doesn't really matter. What's really popular with Excel users is the view function. And the view function does nothing else than just, start a new Excel instance over here, paste the data, turn it into an Excel table, and now you can just scroll through it and use, the abilities from the Excel table. So that's actually, funny enough, a community contribution, and that turned out to be very popular amongst the users. But that's sort of like really just meant to be for these one-offs, for if you do some interactive work in a Jupyter notebook and you just, you want to look at that data frame in a little bit more of a familiar environment. The programmatic interface, the one that I was, showing you the preview, is like that. So like I can say, give me a new book, and then give me the reference to that sheet. So as you can see, it created another new workbook in the background. And then I can practically do the same. So I can just say, again, what we've seen in the preview, just assign that data frame to the upper left corner of where you want to have it. And then you are faced with, the data frame over here in Excel. And then some of the things that other solutions can't do is really use that, the features that Excel, the application itself, offers to you, such as an autofit call here, so that it automatically fits the cell width to, so that it shows everything that you want to show. And then you have the ability to read the data back. And in this case, again, you have an option to just say, give me, start at cell A1, read the whole table. That's basically as if you would do like Control Alt Shift and down, like this guy here, and turn it into a data frame right away, and then you're sort of like back to where we started. And so that's how you can use a Python environment, either a Python script or a Python Jupyter notebook here, to interact with Excel and send data back and forth. All right, and then let's move over. So that was this first part here, the Jupyter notebooks, and now we're going to see how we can create spreadsheet tools that use a little bit of a little bit more power than what you can do with the with just VBA. And so my classic example, not this one, this one. So the classic example that I always use is a Monte Carlo simulation, and the reason for that is that it's a computationally intensive, and I've seen just too many times in my previous career that people would use Excel to like fill them up with pseudo-random numbers, make them 25 megabyte big or bigger, and so practically make it almost impossible to work with them. And so Python really is the best way of doing that, because it has all the NumPy, or if you like pandas, to do these matrix calculations and generate random numbers, and that's just a very, very neat solution. And so I was telling you before that most of my demo will be using xlwings Lite. So the previous one, the Jupyter notebook, that was using the classic version of xlwings. It's locally installed. It was running a local version of a Jupyter notebook with a local version of Python. But now we're going to switch over here to xlwings Lite. As I said, initially you just go here to the add-in store, you search for xlwings, and then you will find the xlwings add-in. You can also go here, and you will find it then in the so-called add-in store over here, and then you can install it directly, with a click of a button. And so this is the version that uses Python basically in the embedded browser that Excel uses for its modern add-ins. And so everything runs locally, and the reason why you see two buttons here is because I have the production version and also like a development version, and so like I'm gonna show you a new feature later on that's not yet in production. And so basically, so we are here in the xlwings add-in. You can see it opens up directly in the task pane here on the side. And this is really just this is a Visual Studio Code editor. So like it works exactly as you would think it work. You can just say control slash to comment out a few things, or like option up and down to move those lines around. And then down here you have the whole simulation. You read in the few inputs from over here, number of simulations, time horizon, etc. You then do the actual simulation. You generate the normal distribution, the normally distributed random numbers. You put together your process and your price process, and then once you have done the simulation, you can just basically push it out again at the end. And let's just try how this looks like. So you always get the ability to click on that built-in button here on the xlwings add-in itself, but you can also create buttons here on the sheet, and as you can see, that works the same, so you don't necessarily need to have the add-in open. You can also just use that button here in the same way. So like this is very similar to how like Office scripts work, and yeah, it just takes the input, sends it to Python. It then pastes back the output array, and this is just a basic Excel chart. So I think for like really basic stuff, you don't necessarily need to put in a matplotlib plot. And this is really the basic way of how you can build spreadsheet tools. Yeah, and then you can change stuff, right? You can give it less of a standard deviation, a smaller standard deviation, and see how things perform. And you're just very, very quick, and it's generally speaking quite fun to give these tools to the end users, and they don't really need to know more about how things work or how they have been programmed. They just click a button and they feel right at home. Now we can look at another example, which is actually from my upcoming book. It's called the taxi dataset analysis, and I don't want to go too much into details, but I want to just show you how powerful sorry about that, how powerful Excel can become if you connect it with Python and some modern tools. So what I'm doing here is I'm downloading a Parquet file which has all the 3.5 million data set, records from the yellow cab in New York City from January this year. And then we're using DuckDB. You can look at what's inside that Parquet file. You can print a sample of a sample record. And then you can, if we see here, you can have the report script, just select that other script and use that report script to run, a simple DuckDB query that should give us a little bit of an idea how the trips move over the course of a day. So like these are the different hours of the day. You can see the average distance below here and the number of trips at the top, and you can see that they're sort of like inversely correlated. So like during rush hour the trips are shortest, and during the night at 5 a.m. you have like the largest average distance. But what's really important to me is that all of this happens. So like 3.5 million records were processed in a mere not even a half second, and that's just really great because you can combine tools like DuckDB with modern file formats like Parquet. You can store them on a data lake on an S3 storage, and that's just like connecting sort of like the modern world with Excel, where not even like Power Query would allow us to do that in the sense that you can't load Parquet files. Now let's move over to the third part of my demo, which is about custom functions. And for custom functions, I have also a favorite demo, which is about correlations. You may know the Corel function, right? The built-in Corel function in Excel, which unfortunately only allows you to analyze, two time series. So building correlation matrices is a little bit cumbersome. So what I've done here is I've just said, look, I'm building the Corel2 function. I'm using here the type hints in Python to just convert the input into a pandas data frame. And then that gives me the chance to just simply do .core, and that's all I need to do. And then so I am going to call the Corel2 function here, I give it, these are weekly returns from like the Dow Jones from like 10 years ago. And boom, you know, I have a dynamic array which gives me the correlations of each of these assets. And then this here is going to be the feature which hasn't been released yet into production, which is why I'm using a test version here of xlwings Lite. You can just say, oh, give me the heat map of that dynamic array, and then that will actually give me that matplotlib here, matplotlib picture. I can say create a reference, and then I have a perfect heat map of my correlation matrix over here. And so yeah, all the code that I need to use for this is what you can see here. So it's not exactly difficult. It's just using the Seaborn package, which has basically an integrated heat map. And so like that's fully dynamic. So like, you know, if I then take the a couple of returns and make them static, then you can see that the correlation obviously updates, and the heat map over here too. So that's the correlation example, and I think that's pretty much yeah, what I wanted to show today. There's another sample I have prepared. I can quickly run through it. It's just basically it's showing you how you can get, you know, data from over the web, and then it just like does things like rebasing a couple of time series, and it does that all in a similar way to what we've just done on the correlation part. But so yeah, so this is get stock history, and you know, you link to it to the table here. So it's really dynamic, and it puts out the plot here. And so like if I just, you know, change the table here, then it automatically updates the custom function. It also updates my my plot here, and then I can just, you know, go to change the start year, and then it rebases it on the fly. So like it gives you tools to work with time series in a very, very intuitive and easy way. And it's just things that are so much more awkward to do if you have to do them natively in Excel. I guess all of these things are possible. It's just much more effort. And that's pretty much all I wanted to show you today. If you have questions, I'll be around in the chat, and yeah, feel free to let me know. All right, thanks so much for having me, and have a good rest of the conference.